standards must cast a broader net for workers. So our kids will be competing for jobs against students from Shanghai, Stockholm, Singapore, and beyond. What do our kids need to catch up? Better reading and comprehension skills, better writing and communication skills, the ability to apply math concepts to everyday life, and strong foundations in science and technology. Our kids also need higher order skills, creativity and innovation, analytical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to work well with different kinds of people. Wow! Where do we start? Meet the Common Core State Standards in English Language Arts and Mathematics. They outline what our students should know and be able to do in each grade. Think of them in terms of 3 words: fewer, clearer, higher. Fewer topics covered than in the old standards. The teachers drill deeper into each so kids learn more. Clearer definitions of achievement, so we know what our kids must accomplish to be ready. And higher expectations for what kids learn, so they can qualify for the best jobs out there. The standards are not about memorizing facts to pass a test. They emphasize critical thinking and problem solving, so kids can draw big picture conclusions, so they can create workable solutions in their adult jobs, so they can lead their peers worldwide. The standards can be tailored for all kinds of learners, and they line up with what colleges and employers need. 46 states have voluntarily adopted Common Core State Standards in English Language Arts and Mathematics. Our teachers are now being trained to use them. Schools should begin moving toward the new standards now, completing the transition by the 2014-2015 school year. How will we know if the new standards work? Through a new system of assessment with tests. Current classroom teachers are helping develop them. The tests will occur throughout each school year. The year will begin with a diagnosis of what students know, and the tests track each child's growth through the year. For language arts, that means analyzing increasingly difficult texts and presenting evidence to back up conclusions. For math, that means they spend more time reasoning, problem solving, and applying math concepts to new situations. The new tests will be computer-based to give teachers results they can use quickly. We will know in every grade if a child is on track to be ready, so students are much less likely to fall behind, and more likely to graduate ready to succeed in life. Whose idea was this? The new assessments are not national or federal tests. States have teamed up to create them as members of 2 groups, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. With these tests, we can measure and level achievement across our state, our nation, the world, and they will be better tests than any one state could afford to develop alone. In the end, who's accountable? The test scores will help measure school and district effectiveness, teacher effectiveness, and help students with stacking up against their peers in other states and the world. So what can parents do? Parents can learn what the standards contain. They can understand the workplace their children will be entering, and they can support higher expectations. Now that we know about the new Common Core State Standards, let's talk.
So Craig and I are going to take a few minutes to talk with you. So if you think about where we began talking about rigor, talking about the integration, that it's everybody's job, that we're looking at all students, that all students are college and career ready when they graduate from any high school here in the United States.
So the video mentioned 46, 45 states, but widely adopted. I think in the literature, while Alaska is on the fence and maybe it flipped over by the time that other video was created.
You know, and the key here is that these standards are now benchmarked internationally. So one of the issues that we've all faced with both CAP and CMT, you have all 50 states with their own standards, with their own tests. And so now you have 46 of our states, all the students in those states taking the same test, with the same benchmark, with the same measurement. But what pushes us beyond that is really that it's internationally benchmarked.
So, Tim has said that we have a nice trend data in CAP. Things will change with the new assessment in 2014. And that's true. And the difference is it won't just be Connecticut that will be comparing it to, like our third graders, but it will be the vast majority of the nation. And so where we only have one data element, we'll be able to have a broader perspective than ever before.
And so when you think about the big messages from not only the readings that you did over the weekend, but also taking a look at this video clip, you mentioned the word complexity of text and informational text. So what is it that we're asking? All content areas. And that the text is complex in that the readability of that text is more dense and more challenging, and so that we need to provide all the students with the strategies in order to comprehend and understand what they're reading. The other piece is that we also need to train our students to use the text to really locate the information, the knowledge that they need to solve a problem. And they're not just the who, what, when, and where, but it really pushes them into the why, the inferential, and the higher order thinking. The other piece is using text for research and being able to substantiate an opinion as well as to argue a perspective with using the text to provide that evidence. And the word focus here is always narrowing the focus and drilling deeper so that you're not covering lots. You're covering less information and you're drilling down deep so the students walk away with a very solid conceptual understanding of the material. That's the key. And that's probably one of the biggest differences between our national standards and the international standards.
So we look at language arts where we have not fully aligned yet to the Common Core. We are primed and ready to go. We have done a full curriculum revision in 2009 where we brought the GLE standards, and we're working on making the final adjustments to the Common Core. And so when we talk about looking at different types of reading, it used to just be a lot of nonfiction, almost until high school, and then a lot of fiction until high school, and then nonfiction pretty much in high school. And there's been a much dramatic change in that. We want to have a balance of literature, informational text, fiction, nonfiction at the elementary, and that should be pretty much 50-50. And so, when Kathleen said a lot of text dependent and going back and finding information in the text is really what's that nonfiction material in, say, science and social studies. In middle school, we actually want even a little bit more nonfiction or informational text. And in high school, you can see that most of the reading is really on that informational level, where your English classes might have the fiction or the literacy text, but it's much more strategic. Similar with writing. If you think about how the P&Cs are designed right now, we kind of teach genre in phases over years, and we say that basically, kids in lower elementary would do narrative, middle elementary, upper elementary would do expository, and upper middle school would do persuasive. Just being around my niece and nephew can tell you that a 5-year-old can be very persuasive. So what we see in this new sort of alignment is that there's a balance of genres. And so during the K to 5 years, we want to look at where maybe there's a little bit more narrative and expository, a little less persuasive, but it's still there. And in middle school, and if you have any middle schoolers, you know that they're much more persuasive. So a little bit more on the persuasive and expository, a little less on the narrative. And then in high school, if you can see the swing.
Early on when we were just kind of brainstorming what you understood about the standards, you talked about integration and thinking about it from an interdisciplinary perspective. This really pushes it much beyond that. It's really around the integration of reading, speaking, listening, viewing, writing across all content areas. And so as we've been talking about for the last 2 years with the literacy initiative here within our district, I think we're really positioned to do well in the types of professional development and training. So as we begin to transition and to inform our staff as to what these new standards look like, the key is that all of us, not some of us, are employing these standards into our content areas. So if you just, So the standards, the goal here is really to design very rich tasks for our students in the classroom. So the types of activities, the types of assignments that we give students really address more than one of the standards, but many of the standards. They call it multiple standards within one rich task for all students.
So, I said earlier that, our language arts is in a good place right now. We do have a balanced literacy program, as you recall, in elementary, and so we're very strong in that. When we said literacy is part of science and social studies, it's really what are those literacy skills that will enhance the learning of the topics of science and the topics of history. And as we do curriculum revisions in history, and then later in science, we'll be infusing those process skills right in the curriculum, showing that it's skills that doesn't matter what you teach, you want to have all the children know. And we've been doing that. It's a natural fit in elementary. It's become a natural fit in middle school with the work with the social studies department, work hand in hand with the English department on literacy skills. When we say appropriate complex tests, so that's the scaffolding that Jody was saying. So we want to basically have texts that are at the student's ability, and if it's a little bit higher, what's the strategic help that we can get so that we make meaning of it. And so a big shift in history is primary source documents. And so how can we have students, middle school, high school, really understand very, very important texts, but they're a little hard to understand at first. So making meaning of that. Questions regarding sort of text attendance. And so one might compare some great works and where are there similarities, where are there differences, why was this written in this time period, why was this written in this time period. So all of those rich discussions, it's not just learning in abstract. And when we want to write to inform, write to sort of make an argument, and that's not a bad thing, that's just stating your case, and really using a lot of evidence. And then academic vocabulary, always really making meaning of words that might be new.
Not a roster of vocabulary, but vocabulary that you're going to encounter in the text that you're going to interact with. In the area of mathematics, again, when you see focus, it's really identifying very strategically the mathematical concepts by grade that you want students to dig deep. So again, when you hear the term less is more, it's fewer concepts but a very deep understanding conceptually. When you think about coherence, it's really connecting the learning from grade level to grade level. So there's really that vertical articulation, and you're building upon what students have learned in earlier grades, so that each year, each standard is extended from one grade to the next. When you're thinking about fluency, some of us, we used to be drilled our facts and we used to know them immediate recall. And that's what that's talking about, speed and accuracy with simple calculations. Deep understanding, most of us sitting at this table probably got very good at procedures and formulas. And it's really moving beyond the procedure, that you're really looking at a number of perspectives. How can you transfer understanding from one situation to the next? The other part related to that is that you're able to speak and write about your thinking and your understanding related to those mathematical concepts. When you think about application, you're looking at applying those math concepts to real-world situations. And we gave you a couple of examples in the packet to take a look at. In the dual intensity, that's the practice along with understanding, so that you're extending the math applications with math concepts. When you're looking at the priorities, so when we talk about deep understanding and less is more with a clear focus, you see here's the breakout. And as you looked at the new materials that you adopted last springtime, this was the area of focus, that the materials that we selected for our students in the area of mathematics. So what needs to change?
So, for materials, reading English should be balanced. We've achieved that. Materials are focused, and that will unwrap more when we go over the history curriculum renewal and the science curriculum renewal. Teachers, this is where we get into professional development. Really, the shift is not spoon feeding and totally leading the kids to an answer, but basically how can we state a problem, and through the reading, how can they make meaning of it? And so the shift is really those text-dependent questions and having the students have sort of a deeper understanding. And, you know, you can do this in many ways. Basically, you know, it's in the curriculum, it's in the instruction, and it's in the assessments that we will be challenging our students with. And so the assessments will, as you'll see, will be a natural fit.
So as Craig talked about the assessment with the English language arts, you're really looking at informational passages. Students are writing to sources. They're not decontextualized prompts. There's actually a connection to the text. And as I mentioned earlier around mathematics, it's the narrow focus and it's the conceptual understanding and being able to apply that understanding to real-world situations. So as you see here, your curriculum, your instruction, your graduation, your scheduling, your Board of Education, your staffing, your textbooks are all going to be interlinked with the Common Core.
So what do we do when we are faced with a new standard and Common Core is a new standard? Well, really, we want to see where our present curriculum is. We want to see where this new standard is. And in the middle is this gap, and we begin each curriculum revision with a gap analysis to see how we need to make some strategic changes in our curriculum, and what do we need to shift, either focus in by emphasizing more or emphasizing less. We talk about what it is that we want students to know. Yes, it's the basics, reading, writing, listening, speaking, but it's also those 21st century skills of critical thinking, problem solving, debating issues, and defending one's position.
What's interesting about that slide, that's just not the skills for students, but that's the delivery, how I as a teacher would design my instruction in order to bring those to life. So both Tim and Jody made comments that it's really about the rigor, it's really about the readiness, and it's all students. And that's what these standards are about. It's stretching our teaching and stretching the learning to the very highest level of rigor. So the major shift is really from a mindset perspective. And so this is the work of Carol Dweck, and there's a great deal of research around all of this. So when you think about a fixed mindset, we would approach and look at the students in front of us and say that intelligence is static. You're either smart or you're not. And that when you have that kind of mindset, you're actually really saying that the teacher is insignificant. The shift here is that the teaching is very significant, that intelligence can be developed, that anyone can learn, and quite frankly, all students ought to learn at high levels. And there's a real value on effort, because hard work contributes to high levels of learning.
So, talking about metacognition, we often say, teachers are reflective practitioners. And it's really, we always think about what we've just done, how can we do it better, really get to continuous improvement. And so, when we think about thinking, what we want kids to be more engaged in are to be able to explain the learning task in their own words, and express their plan, and this is their own making meaning, creating their own meaning. So again, we're not spoon feeding; they're making the meaning. Consider their personal strengths and interests, and relevant to completing the task. So again, this is where there's a personal connection, and how can they make meaning of it, be able to defend it, and then to set goals for the future. This ties into the work that we're doing with the school counselors and the student success plan that you'll be hearing in the spring about trying to see what worked well for them and what works well in the future. And
so these are some of the strategies really to push towards learning. As Craig just talked about, the metacognition, the student as worker, the student as a reflective learner, but also organizing the curriculum as to what we call units of study, learning progressions. You're chunking it and going deep. And the key is to really unwrap it so that the students have a very deep level of understanding.
Now, this matrix up here really what our staff will be engaged in this year. We are having Aaron Tess as one of our professional development speakers here on November 6th for grade 6 through 12 staff, and November 5th in the afternoon for our curriculum leaders, our department heads, and our administrators. And really what she has done is taken the work of Bloom, people have understanding of youth taxonomy, and led sort of depth of knowledge work. And what this is showing you is you would think on Bloom to create something is the highest thinking, but there's really, when we talk about the depth of understanding, creation could be just brainstorming ideas, and that's very different than developing a complex model or even synthesizing information across the text. And so what this work, what this learning in the future will result in is units of study. And so what we hope to do with our language arts curriculum is bring you a refined curriculum not only to the Common Core, but have delineated units of study which has some outcomes that really challenges students on a deeper level. And so, questions for advanced learning, are as follows: where's the learner going? Where's the learner right now? And where must we go? In this work, we basically want to align our assessments. Teachers are doing more pre-teaching, pre-assessments to see where the children are, so they can focus their interactions with the students with what they don't know, and then ensure that they have a mastery level of understanding. Monitoring checks, and then performance tasks. This work here will lead towards some standards-based outcomes, which will result in some report cards and accountability. So, smarter balance assessment. You heard from the video overview, there are two assessment systems in the nation. The SBAC, which we're part of the PARC. 23 states are in the smarter balance, and so we'll be able to compare ourselves with pretty much half the nation that way. And these assessments are all online. There'll be limited periods of time where teachers can bring the students to the computer lab or the labs to do this assessment. There'll be constructive response, performance tasks, and when it says technology enhanced items, I want to show you on the Smarter Balance just the little video clips to really engage the children. So this was one of the sample performance tasks that Jerry had sent in your board package, and it's really making meaning of a real life circumstance. And the question would be, comparing the cost efficiency, and you can kind of see some of the questions here and here. I'd like to jump off this for a moment, just to show you So, in math, for example, when it says computer generated, you see the swimmers, the race, and the split times, and basically now asking the child to understand why rounding to the 10th makes a difference for the hundredth. So on this, the rubric, so we talked about rubrics, to get like a full point, that's what the student would have to do. When we get to an item like rectangle for upper elementary, say a rectangle is 6 foot long and the perimeter is 20 1/3 feet. What's the rectangle? Well, again, look at sort of how to solve this problem. And you get full credit, partial credit, depending on the student's explanation. So it's not just fill in the blanks, it's really making meaning of it and to explain it. So, in conclusion, basically this leads to professional development, and that's really the key. Professional development, how are we going to achieve the academic rigor, professional development around depth of knowledge, because that's one of our key speakers this fall. And then one of the look fors in instructional rounds and other things is who is doing the work. If the students, if the teacher is doing all of the presenting, the thinking, the posing of questions, and all the students have to do is a quick little response, the teacher is doing more of the work. So how can we engage the learning environment so the students are doing more of the work by really digging into the text, making meaning of it, and then ensuring that our staff employs all the effective instruction strategies.
So one of the phrases that you used at the beginning was the term shift. And our hope is that we were able to give you some background as you could see the shift. And really, this is our next level of work here in the Waterford Public Schools. Not only from a curriculum perspective, but really from a teaching and learning perspective. The ways we ought to be teaching and the ways our students ought to approach learning. So that's really going to be our area of focus over the next couple of years. Testing will occur in grades 3 through 8 and no longer in 10th. It will be in grade 11. So any questions, and are you ready to take the test?
A lot to absorb. Jody?
This is in place of the 10th after, right?
It is.
They don't have to be both.
No, in place of.
Okay. And then what I like about this is I think it's geared more towards also the SAT for the high school students. I mean, you're concentrating on vocabulary now and a lot of the reading and the math. So I'm hoping that it could also help our SAT scores.
And one of the issues John raised, when overseeing from CAP, there's really only causal data connection between DNT and CAP, and I think there'll be a much stronger connection between all the assessments grades 3 through 8 and 11 with these. So there is a connection, not only with the SATs, but then also...
But Jody was really driving it as the college and career readiness piece
Right.
that Kelly Shannon talked about last year in her presentation.
I just have one more.
Oh, go ahead, Jody. No, go ahead and then try.
I'm a little concerned with the teachers and the administrators with our new teacher evaluations, and they're learning all this also. I mean, I think it's a lot, in one clip, and I'm concerned about them being able to handle everything, and our administrators being able to handle all the evaluations you have to do, and what they're supposed to be looking for now with the new curriculum.
Thank you for your comment.
Well, I'm concerned.
I'll get you in touch with the governor tomorrow.
Oh, I'll talk to him.
Thank you.
As
a teacher,
All right, Tim. John?
Yeah, I have a number of questions. Connecticut has adopted the standards. Does that mean that all districts must adopt the standards?
Yes.
All right, so it's a waterfall.
All 169 communities.
And my understanding is that the objective here is to graduate more students that are college ready and students that are more college ready than in the past, and the same place with the workplace.
Correct.
Graduate more students that are. Okay. So my question is, what data? What's the question here? What data or information do we have that projects that this will improve and will foster more college-ready and workplace-ready students?
The data really comes from the employers. A year ago, I shared with you an article from Tony Wagner, really with an interview and data and research collected from businesses across the country, and just describing how ready are our students for the world of work. What are the strengths that they bring? What are the areas that they're short in?
Weaknesses.
Yeah. And what you're seeing here in this alignment really goes hand in hand with that particular assessment. The other piece is that it's more than just the national, it's now the international benchmark. And so really looking at the global competition and making sure that we can compete for those high-powered jobs, so to speak.
Another question I had was, really confused me with this headline here, and this that you gave us. The Common Core gives us an opportunity to encourage widespread implementation of more effective practices because the standards are flexible, so broadly written. My question is, what flexibility do we have? I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
What flexibility do we, as a school district, have in deviating or making some big course corrections in the implementation of the standards?
It's a selection of resources and materials and text. So you're not looking at one universal textbook or one universal curriculum. And so, for example, at a high school level, you may have a humanities course where you have two subject areas, social studies and English, combined, and you would walk into the classroom and you'd say, so is this English or is this history? And the response would be yes, because it's seamless. You see the integration of the reading, the writing, the speaking, the presenting, and you're using different types of text. So the key is that we're selecting the resources that really bring to life these standards, and that the resources are rigorous and that they're challenging the students. And then the task that you design with those resources, so it's around thinking, creativity, problem solving.
Okay. And then as we progress and get enough data, it seems as though that the test scores would be our indication of improvements in I'm kind of lost with how do you then translate that into, okay, grades go up, the test scores are going up or not. Are we succeeding in producing or graduating students that are more college ready or workplace. Correlating test scores to the primary objective of graduating a more college ready student base or workforce. I don't know how you do that. I mean, just because test scores are going up, I don't know. It seems that has to be some kind of closed loop back to the colleges.
And I think those two organizations that Craig talked about were 23 states in one and 23 in the other. So that particular think tank really has wrestled with that, so that Connecticut's not doing this alone, or Waterford's not doing it alone. You're bringing together the expertise in the development of these tests. And we certainly will give you our 2 cents on it as we go through this and what the assessments all look like.
That seems like a good path. I'm not sure but I've thought about it very long, but
But again, one of the biggest criticisms with No Child Left Behind is all 50 states came up with their own standards and their own benchmarks and scored very differently. But however, when students take the National Assessment for Educational Progress, the state that scored the highest in the results on their homegrown test was close to the bottom on the national test. So this is trying to put that field out there that's level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Where to start?
This is just an appetizer, guys. Come on.
My major concern in all of this is that this model, and it's very laudable, and as an educator, I would love the idea of this, but it presupposes that you have a very engaged, self-reliant student. It's much more similar to a college or university approach at the high school level, where students are going to be very responsible for text, reading outside of the classroom, bringing information in, writing based on those texts, and the teachers are going to be guiding that. And that's tremendous. And I think that in a community like Waterford, we'll do pretty well. I think that it's a model that will serve us very well. But even our population is pretty disparate.
We have some
a lot of
diversity.
kids who are not at that point in high school, and certainly any kind of higher order thinking has to be introduced in a very age-appropriate fashion. And for some of our younger high school students, certainly those who are achieving at a little bit lower level, this is going to be extremely challenging. And I guess the biggest challenge, I think, is that we're implementing this on the fly, so that we're taking kids who have not been sort of brought along in this model and throwing them into the model into the event. So that some of our high school age students and even some of our middle school age students are going to have a rough time when we start transitioning to this model, particularly if they haven't been kind of weaned along through. For a kid who's starting his education now in first grade, if we're all on board with this and the process goes forward, by the time they're in high school, they're a junior in high school, and they may be very successful in this kind of a model. But for a lot of kids, this is going to be very, very challenging and very rigorous in the short term. Looking outside of our own community, there are communities with populations that the vast majority of the population are going to have a very difficult time with this model. And I'm just worried that it may collapse of its own weight if it's not successful within a fairly short amount of time.
Well,
it's a very different approach, and it seems like we're diving into the deep end rather than wading out into the deep end.
Well, on a bigger view, the international players aren't going away. The international competition isn't going away. And so you make some excellent points. You have to transition at some point, and I think really the purpose tonight was to give you some background, but also let you know that we're starting the transition process. We're not waiting for 2014-15. The other piece, really on a philosophical perspective, is if it doesn't happen here in our schools in all 169 communities in Connecticut, then where will it happen? Because once the students leave us, they're either prepared or they're not prepared. So I agree with you. We have many students that come with tremendous support systems, and we have others that bring us a variety of challenges each and every day. And if we're not doing it, who else is going to do it? So I understand that, and we know of all those challenges, and those are the different types of supports that we put in place. But your point's well taken. But the key is for us, as a country, we need to step up to the plate with this.
Patting ourselves on the back, the country mirrored Waterford's test scores, we would not be 14th and 20th.
You're right.
We would be 1, 2, 3. We do very well, but there's vast chunks of the country that do not do this well, and 46 states are undertaking this, so it's going to be very challenging.
If I may, minor commentary, kind of backing up what Jody said, and we'll watch that as we go through our budget assumptions to be sure that as we're demanding more, that we're also giving enough time for the instructional strategies to our teachers, because I think going along with what you're saying, Tim, in order to be successful, we have to be sure that we're allowing our teachers the appropriate amount of time for professional development. But just to ease a little bit, and then you clarified that at the ending of your comment, I do think here in Waterford over the past few years we've been listening about many of the strategies that are being used currently. They'll be enhanced, but we're already doing a good deal of this work already within the district. Is that correct?
We're underway.
Okay. Because I think that's...
Aren't we, Eileen?
We're
underway.
We're building on that from what we've heard. Yeah.
Yes.
One question, this is very minor, but as we looked throughout the interdisciplinary approach, and if literacy is highlighted, say in the science and in the history classes, then will the child be evaluated also on the literacy components of the answering in a particular content area? In other words, will the evaluation still be the same? Or I'm just having a little
Well, in
trouble.
order to perform well on the test, the student will need to
All
read
those
and comprehend all of that in order
the
to
vocabulary,
display their mathematical understanding.
spelling, all of those areas will be evaluated in that particular area.
But if the history teacher and science teacher employ the same instructional strategies to really...
So they'll be reinforcing it.
...the literacy skills, what we're saying is that greater learning will occur. And so part of it is that are we all teaching the same process skills, and then each content will be evaluating their own content.
Right. Okay. So maybe we could have a little update on this in a few months to see
Or
where
even
we're
next year.
Yeah. All right. Wait.
We're just rolling this out.
All right. Thank you. I think it's very informative for us, and we certainly appreciate the time to give us this presentation. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, that takes us, I believe, to our consent agenda, if I'm not mistaken. Are there any comments or questions concerning the consent agenda? Then I'll need a motion that the Waterford Board of Ed approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes of September 27th, regular meeting, monthly financial expenditure report for September 2012, and food service monthly report for September 2012. Thank you, John. Second by Sherry. No other discussion. We'll move to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Takes us to reading and correspondence. Mr. Belair?
I have one piece of correspondence to share with you. We just learned from CABE that this board once again has received the CABE Board Recognition Award, and it will be presented at the CABE CAPS convention on Friday, November 16th. So congratulations to this board.
Thank you. Talking about CABE, we had in the past, was that it for you?
That's it.
Okay. We had the CABE Vision Survey they actually mailed me an additional one, so I did fill it out. Joyce, thank you for sending that out. If you have one, if you did fill it out and you haven't handed it in to Joyce, we'll collect them tonight. Also, do you receive this? Do you get this in the mail? All of you have this, so I don't need to leave this here? Okay. And then this I should give to you for the teachers, the seminar on the Holocaust next Monday. I just received that. And then finally, this, since we're all learning so much, schools that learn, have you seen this text? It might be worthwhile for us if we could, since we're cut way back on conferences and traveling, that if we could have a book once in a while that we can keep and continue to grow the library, we can keep up. Thank you. I think that's it for correspondence for me. Takes us right to your report.
I just had a few items to share this evening. You'll notice some of the artwork on display is from our high school students as well as from our freshman seminar and also from a health class. So high school student work is featured this month, and kudos to our students at Waterford High School. Also, I had shared with you on a Friday note that Waterford High School ranked second in the state of Connecticut on the recent Career in Technology Education Assessment, and that's a wonderful recognition. And on November 9th, at the statewide conference, Waterford High School will be recognized, and this is in the areas of career and technical education classes over at our high school. The area of technology with drafting and auto and photography, and so you have Chris Cassidy, Dave Jarzabek, and Walt Canova, as well as Connie Montanaro with the ProStart program, Lynn Klorizek with our ECE and Bake Shop. That's an interesting combination. Students participated in the exam at the end of the last school year. There were 32 of our students, and they had the second highest test scores on that particular assessment. So that's a nice recognition and a nice honor. Also, wanted to share with you, last Thursday, we had the K-9 walkthrough at Waterford High School, another good example of the partnership between our schools and the police department. And I'm pleased to report, as I did last Thursday, nothing was found. So that was great news. Also, you had requested that Bill Martin, the Executive Director of the Waterford Country School, join us for a presentation, and I've extended the invitation to November, so he'll be here at our next meeting. Michael Spanos is the high school senior class president, and he'll be attending our November Board of Education meeting and provide a report, as one of our goals is involving students at our meetings. I'm also pleased to announce that Joyce Sawchuk will be appointed as our new HR director, and she will begin work on November 15th. Joyce comes from the town of Groton with more than 20 years of experience in the HR management over at the town of Groton, has a great deal of experience with negotiations and mediation and benefits and other human resources responsibilities. So both Dan and I are announcing this publicly tonight. He's doing it via email, and I figured with us having a board meeting tonight, I'd share it with you. So those are the items that I wanted to share this evening.
Thank you. And since we're doing quite well recognizing our students and teachers at Board of Ed meetings, can we do that with the Tech Ed piece at the next meeting? That would be nice. That takes us right to our committee and other reports. I know Jody has a report. Thank you.
First, the school building committee. I don't know how many of you were able to go on the tour. The high school's coming along very nicely. Here's the October report of what's been accomplished.
It was our most heavily attended tour, wasn't it? We had a great set of representation.
Everyone was there.
Wonderful.
If you have any questions that you'd like me to bring up at the next school building committee meeting, just let me know. Now on to Youth Service Bureau. We have a new member, Eugene Brennan. He's fairly new to Waterford, and we're looking forward to working with him. The Youth Service Bureau has 5 new mentors, which were greatly needed, and the program is doing very well. Last week we had a report from our high school student representatives, and last week was Spirit Week. And who had to kiss the pig down?
They haven't kissed him yet.
Oh. That's what they were talking about.
Gene Ryan.
Oh.
I think it's Paul Patron.
I think it's going to be Tim. And we had the last of our night home football games at Waterford High School, and I just wanted to publicly thank Jay Miner and Christine Littlefield and Everett Littlefield for all their help. I don't know if you know, but our stand is not ready yet, so we've been set up in the cafeteria, which is, it works out very well, but it takes a lot to get it organized. So I just wanted to thank them, and under Jay's leadership, I mean, his son's playing football, but we've been calling him in the stands because we can't, so the electricity, we keep blowing fuses and everything else, so he has to come in and help us.
But that's in the cafeteria.
Oh, the cafeteria, not the stand. The stand's going to be very nice once it's done. We started, the Youth Service Bureau started a WADE subcommittee for grant writing because the grant that they have is up for renewal, and hopefully next year we'll get the good news that that's going to be sustained. Brianna Grill, who was our student representative from the high school last year, received a statewide Student Leadership Award, and we're very, very proud of her. Right now, the Youth Service Bureau is meeting to discuss all the holiday programs, and I made a copy for board members on what's going on for Thanksgiving, and also to help families during Christmas time. And also, I was made aware of the Arnold Holmes Jr. Memorial Park that we're going to we're trying to get started here in Waterford. And if anybody would like to make a donation to the Waterford Park Foundation, they wanted to name the park right next to the Waterford Library after Arnold, who was our hometown hero. Here's some information about that for anybody that might be interested.
Right over by the duck pond.
Yeah.
Instead of being the duck pond, it will be the
Arnold Holmes Memorial Park.
And I take the donations on behalf of the Waterford Park Foundation today. Yeah,
Nice. It's all on here, the information. But we haven't had a parent liaison council meeting yet.
We're going in November.
Let's just go quickly. Thank you. Jody gives recognition to everyone, and I'd just like to recognize Jody because I was actually saw her with the big, or they're making the hot chocolate and the football and doing everything, keeping everyone moving in and out. So I don't know how she does it, but she gives 100% of herself and was there. And if I just may say that it was a cold night, I had an opportunity to look, the football field looked beautiful, and the press box, they let me go in for a few minutes. It was wonderful, and everything looked fabulous. So thank you, Jody. Maybe the board would like to adopt, we could do as a full board, something for the Thanksgiving for the Youth Service Bureau. I think we did that once in the past. And that would be nice.
I know they're going to be doing Stuff the Bus at Christmas.
Right.
They wanted to do it Stuff the Bus at Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
They go around to the schools, and that was well received the last 2 years, and students really enjoyed that.
If we could maybe do something as a full board to help out, that would be good. Thank you. The only one thing on the school building committee report, I hope I'm not saying the wrong thing, but the signs, will the Board of Ed get a chance to look at the signage or not? Oh, you saw it. Okay, that's right. Okay. Oh, you're doing a survey. Good. Okay. I just was curious.
Those aren't final versions at all. That's your first crack at it.
Because I don't think the board saw. I don't know. Okay. Thank you. Circulate those next time.
I didn't bring it with me, but
We could do an exit poll next Tuesday.
Yeah. That's all I was saying. Okay. Any other committee reports? We just had Finance Committee, which you'll probably talk about in a minute.
Sure.
So, if there are no other reports, we can move right to our new business, which would be to take a look at the budget assumptions for the 2014 year. You did have an enclosure with the efficiencies and cost containment.
When we look at the items under our new business tonight on the agenda, they're really all centered on the budget process for the upcoming year. And so we're just beginning that process, and we'd like to start it here with the board. This is a draft of assumptions, and when we talk about assumptions, we're really talking about, here are the guidelines. Here's what this financial plan needs to support. So in the first assumption, the focus really is around we need to be sensitive to the economic climate. We know that we need to be very mindful of, if we're going to be adding anything to the budget, is there another way to fund it? Is there an opportunity to reallocate resources so that we continue to be very cost effective? And so the focus here is really around efforts to contain costs. And we know our number one driver in the past few years has been around health benefits. We want to continue to increase the enrollment in the high deductible health plan. In just that brief month that we had at the end of last year to start some recruiting, we have 54 members of our staff opting for that particular approach to their health insurance. We're also looking at the possibility of participating in a regional health insurance co-op, and also continuing to negotiate aggressively our benefits. With transportation, we're looking at a number of regional opportunities to save in that area, as well as continue to partner with other town agencies, and I think that's become a real strength of the work that the board does with our town. Basically, we go out to bid together on just about anything and everything that we possibly can. The second item really relates to your class size guidelines. And so it's really our goal to present class sizes in the upcoming budget that fit these guidelines. And so when you see a range of 15 to 20, sometimes it's just dependent upon the total number of enrollment at that particular grade level. But these were the guidelines that we utilized a year ago, and you may have some thoughts around that. The other piece that we have to adhere to are all the federal and state mandates, whether they're funded fully, partially, or not at all. Also, our curricular and professional development initiatives, and that's a real strength of this board. There's a real tangible support. And so we've identified the areas of music, art, and social studies and history, and especially with a Common Core taking implementation in 2014-15, that's a critical aspect for us. Continuing to maintain the technology support, and it would be the second year of the technology plan that we supported a year ago. We're working on this assumption with excess costs. So for every dollar after a particular level of expenditure, we're budgeting that we would receive 80%, so 80 cents on the dollar after it reaches 4.5 times the cost of educating a student here in Waterford. And then we have some unique transportation needs of some of our students, and so we need to support that. We also need to be mindful of our collective bargaining agreements with all of our 6 bargaining groups, and that our approach really be needs-based, and that we support it with data, and that we also look at the funding of the grants. We haven't heard anything differently, so right now we're looking at the same level of funding with the 11 grants that I listed here on the assumptions.
Good. Thank you. Are there comments from any members of the board? John?
I have a question I looked for but couldn't find last year's assumptions. So how do you...
They're similar. What's different with cost containment in number 1, again, we accomplished those a year ago, so these were the targets that we're really exploring now. The class sizes are the same guidelines. We need to address the mandates. The curricular areas are new and different because it's aligned with our renewal cycle. The technology, it moves to year 2 of the funding, which would look different than the funding in year 1. Number 6, we're going with the same number until we hear otherwise. It's too early in the process to make that adjustment. Number 7 is something that we have to be mindful of. 8 as well. You know, there's been a lot of discussion with the other town boards around funding for next year, and one of the comments has been you have contracts that are settled, so you need to honor those, so that might be an exception with any increases to budgets, so that's why I highlighted that one. They're similar, and really the overriding concept of all of this is to really be cost effective and contain costs wherever we can. but not to lose on quality.
Just like to take this opportunity just for a moment to recognize and compliment our superintendent and assistant superintendent for really, over these past couple of years, really looking in every area for cost containment and regionalization. I think that is the key word for balance and restraint, but without sacrificing the quality of our programs. So I think that these budget assumptions do that. I did have just one area that I mentioned, and I understand that these were the guidelines last year, and we need to keep an eye on where the Friendship School goes with transportation issues to see where we'll be. But if we end up with more kindergarten students, I would just like to be on the record by saying that I'd like to keep my eye on that class size, that I believe that 20 in the kindergarten area starts to get high. Not looking for additional funding, but a real allocation of the funding within the budget, that we continue with our cost containment, but that we also do not jeopardize the quality. And I think particularly at that level, we need to be careful. That was the only one piece that looked to me that we might want to keep an eye on. The other, naturally we need to do the mandates and keep everything in that order. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Did you want to take an action on this?
On the assumptions, I think it would be helpful.
So this is the time for the board to really take a look to see if there's anything else that you would like to have as an assumption for the operation.
Did we agree to add something about not sacrificing quality of education? Because
it's important.
That kind of came involved in the discussion, but I think one might assume that these in total suggest that we are not going to sacrifice quality, but that there should be somehow worked into the first assumption.
It could even be in your opening statement right below. The FY 2014 budget should present as realistic as possible the cost for each program provided by the school system. This means that budget decisions should be based on meaningful data so that decision makers are well informed. Our goal is to maintain the quality of the program.
I think that's a good addition.
Quality of programs and services.
And in our contracts, I think I had asked that question once before because a number of us did question some. It allows, it's still higher than what we're putting as the guideline. The 26, having the class size up to 26 is still lower than what we're permitted to go. Okay. But it's worthy of keeping our eye on that area, particularly in some of the upper level classes. Anything else? That was good, John.
Got a motion?
I'm waiting to see. Sometimes here, no other discussion on it. Then we can take a motion to. I would look for a motion to accept the Board of Education operating budget assumptions for the upcoming budget. As amended with the correction in the first paragraph.
Yep. So moved.
Thank you, John. Second by Tim. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion's carried. And I believe that takes us to the second piece on the priorities.
Well, just related to that, we had the conversation during the Finance Committee, and we had the conversation that we really should bring this to the attention of the full board, because Kathleen and I will be meeting along with Ron with the Board of Finance on November 14th to give an update as to where we are financially this year and looking ahead into the future. So I think, Joyce, we placed copies at the board seats, so the board has a copy, but this is a copy for the public, and it's labeled draft because it's a work in progress, and I think it's important that we keep that in mind. And just want to spend a couple of minutes to talk about this. One of the things when Kathleen and I visited with the Board of Finance last June, and something that we talked about as a Board of Education throughout the course of the year, you're planning a budget 18 months in advance. And that's with the data that you know at that particular point in time. The key is that once your budget is approved, you ought to continue to be looking for efficiencies, ways to contain costs, and other ways to avoid costs. The other thing is you have some unforeseen circumstances that arise, and a great example of that in the last couple of years not only has been health insurance, but also energy costs. Mm-hmm. So there was a practice that the board joined with the town, and there was a figure that was allocated towards gasoline and all kinds of fuels. Well, for the last couple of years, it's been grossly underfunded. Mm-hmm. And one of the practices we put in place a year ago was to jointly bid our business on the market, and it's really helped us contain our costs, in particular in the area of energy. So what you have here is a roster over the last 2 years of efficiencies and containments and other things that we've done to avoid reoccurring costs. So if you look here for 12-13, so you think about a budget that was approved last May. We continually think about ways that we can enhance the quality or certainly provide equal quality at a more cost-effective manner. So one of the things that we took a look at was an opportunity where we had 3 vacancies in the area of paraprofessionals at Waterford High School. And we really took a look at the student caseload and their needs, and it made more sense for us to really reduce the paraprofessional staff, but to increase the professional staff to better meet the needs. One of the outcomes of that was actually saving a few dollars. And so with 3 employees, you also have 3 benefit packages. And so looking here, you see a net savings just in the salary area. And the reason why you see the difference is this position we've just hired. So we've been through the interview process, and we'll have that person coming on board right after Thanksgiving. We've reduced in the area of advertising, and we will continue to monitor that closely. So this was something that we put into practice in the budget that was approved last May. We're also monitoring the overtime account, and that's been a practice over the last few years where that account has been dramatically decreased. This is probably the best news yet. We are projecting at the end of this year that in our health insurance account we will be returning $550,000 to the town. The Board of Education will be returning $550,000. That's a result of our collective bargaining agreements, the approach that we've taken to negotiation. That's due to the fact that we've recruited 54 of our employees to move in the direction of the health savings account. A very indirect benefit of all of those information meetings that we held, staff who came were on their spouse's insurance plan and the board's insurance plan. Joe met with them independently and was able to say to them, you really only need one plan. So we have actually reduced the enrollment with opting for our health insurance, which has reduced our costs as well. So just those measures at this point in time in projecting out what our budget line will be and what our real expenditures will be. If we did not put these practices into place since July 1st, or actually we did the HSA the end of last May and into June, we would be spending the full budget, but we're looking at returning $550,000 to the town. We have renegotiated the generation contracts around electricity. And so this was a savings that we presented to the town in the last budget cycle. Also, if you look at the difference, if we had not bid out the oil, we would be expending $86,000 more in that area. Transportation, we have some savings with the common calendar. If we had continued with First Student as our vendor, we'd be spending $120,000 more. So by going out to bid, we were able to reduce our transportation costs by $120,000. The work that Ed Crane did in the budget development for this year with going voice over internet has reduced another $24,000. So we have avoided approximately $880,000 of expenditures this year to maintain the level of service that we had in the previous year. The other thing that we're still working on is the way we're funding our special education services at our magnet school. So we may also have a few dollars to save in that area. So that would be the savings for the current year that we're in. When you go over to page 2 and 3, you see the savings, the efficiencies, the avoidance back in 11-12, and this was the difficult budget cycle that we were in. And so you can see the reduction of $649,000, but that's a reoccurring cost that we have avoided by reducing these staffing levels, both certified and non-certified. In addition, as you go to page 3, it was a one-time savings, but there was a wage freeze for the administrative staff. The increase in the premium share, the tuition reimbursement reduction. We also reduced our bus fleet by 2, and that has been a reoccurring savings over the last 2 years. We reviewed all of the bus routes, we looked at efficiencies, and we felt that we could reduce 2 buses. It worked well a year ago, and we've continued with that reduction this year. By bidding our insurance, we were able to save $12,000. We made some difficult decisions during that budget reduction, where in the past we have paid for certain things, the agenda books at the middle school and high school, the graduation expenses, the AP testing. We reduced some supplemental stipends, some of the software accounts. The summer school for the last 2 years, we've gone from 5 to 4 days, and we've really worked hard to make that work and make sure that we keep attendance at a high level. The reduction of instructional supplies that year. We made some tough decisions with our conference funding, our dues and fees, and also conference funding for Board of Ed and administrators. So when you look over the past 2 fiscal years, we have been able to contain costs by a little over $2 million. And we'll continue with a couple of the initiatives that we're still working on, as well as some things that we have planned for the upcoming budget process. But I would also say we're getting close to the well-being drive. We're really working on the operational side. And I say that only because when we were there in June, we got a comment that, well, you know, if we only give you this, we know you can work really hard to get to this dollar amount. And I don't want to play that game. I want to be sure that we're right up front, that we're going to continue to do our work nonstop around savings. We're not going to sacrifice quality, and we're looking at everything. And we're not looking for a target and run as fast as we can to that number. We really need to be presenting a needs-based budget, and we'll continue to work with our neighbors and work with the town and continue to explore other avenues. So I just wanted to share this with you tonight because I think the very best news is the health insurance.
Just thank you. Oh, John, go ahead.
Is there a cost associated with the Common Core standards?
You mean the unfunded mandate?
Let's put one and one together.
To the extent that we had a math renewal, we would have had a math renewal anyway. It's focused on Common Core to incur those costs. With the Landry revised curriculum, we're going to bring it to you with no material cost. It's really in alignment. So the only outstanding cost to that would be the professional development. And that's working within our operational dollars, and it's really just the focus of the work.
Your question, one of the things that we can do is track. So, for example, the last time we renewed history and social studies, we can present to you, here was the cost back then. In order to get up to speed, here's the new cost. And we'll have to factor in inflation because of that time frame, but that would be another good way to get at that. The other thing that you may find with the Common Core, it may not be as textbook driven, but more resource driven. So in the area of social studies, we'll need to look very closely. Are we looking at a textbook or are we looking at primary resources? So that we're outfitting classrooms with a variety of resources versus just one textbook. The other thing that we hope to over time is definitely they're digital. The resources are digital that students can access anywhere at any time. And so I think one of the beauties of what we did in the area of math, that you have that tutorial, that teacher at home when you log on to kind of reinforce what the teacher has done during that day. So that's a new resource that we didn't have the last time we renewed the material. But I'm glad you asked that question, because we'll keep track of that.
I mean, at some point in the budget,
Yep.
you may have to just say, look,
Yep.
these costs are associated with another. I mean,
It's a great point.
to call the Common Core an unfunded mandate is sort of a negative, because we tend to associate unfunded mandates with something that perhaps
We wouldn't want to.
little or no value, but we have to do it. But this, from what I've heard tonight, is probably a lot of value, even though we're not quite sure what the results will be. But it might be important to kind of, wherever we think we have a cost associated with it,
That's a good point.
be able to highlight that in the budget. Again, that's cost going up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. And again, just to reiterate, I'm thankful to receive this again, and to just reiterate that these savings were accomplished and you kept the level of service, and we tried to maintain the quality of our program, and that's going to be key for this board to continue in that direction. And all of the effort for regionalization, and particularly in the healthcare cost area, has really paid off and has allowed us to continue to move. So the administration needs to be complimented for taking that initiative over the past few years and really working hard to get us to this point where we are. And I particularly like to see that in this last year that we were really able to consolidate, and just to go back to what you said with the paraprofessionals, so that everyone understands that all those students that were having the service of the paraprofessionals, those students are still going to receive from the teacher the same service. So that's important to get out, that you didn't take away from any of the students.
If we exchange anything, it's to enhance.
Right.
That's the bottom
And that was important to say. But thank you very much. There's no need for action on that. And that takes us to the last discussion of the budget calendar, which...
If I could, we missed the priorities because I jumped in with the efficiencies, and I want to be careful because last year, if you recall, early on in the process, we did some presentations around learning through service.
Yes.
We talked about reinstating freshman sports, things like that. So before we get too far into the process, because it's forever. The process goes all 12 months, but we're actually now putting the budget to paper. We're actually doing some calculations right now.
Right.
Are there priorities that you want us to pay attention to beyond the assumptions? Are there things that the administrative team needs to focus on from your perspective?
Oh, excuse me, Jim.
Kathleen just already mentioned
Yeah.
the class size situation. Got to be really closely monitored, particularly in the lower grades.
I was kind of at a loss for what you meant by priorities. I mean, we probably all have something that we'd like to see added, and yet we would not want to pick on something to say, well, add this, but let's take away that. So I'm not really sure what you meant by priorities. I mean, the list of assumptions are priorities. I don't know. My question is, what did you mean by priorities?
Well, you think of the three examples in the past year. The third one dealt with some additional literacy support at the high school. So one of the ways we were able to fund that was to reduce a general classroom teaching position. We had an opportunity there, and we used those funds to create additional literacy support. That literacy support is also helping the staff with understanding the Common Core standards. So we're really trying to get at both of those needs at the same time. So if you recall, when we went through the reduction a couple of years ago, we identified a priority for us. We're providing literacy support, but are we providing enough math support? And so when we went through that budget reduction process, we identified the need to put a math intern at each of our schools. And that was a wise way to fund that need. And what we looked at was reallocating resources in order to get to that without spending new money. So I guess really what I'm asking is, and you said it so well, John, there are things we might not have in the budget that we'd like to see. There's a real need there. And if we move in this direction, then you're also challenging us to try to identify the funding within the existing money.
Well, there's something that I think's been missing from high school. I've brought it up in the past, and that's in music. Our music programs are focused on the students who participate in music, the instrumentalists, and what have you. Essentially the participants in music. But we've never. I think that it should be available as a music appreciation class for the students who do not participate in music, but I think we should have the opportunity for them to experience other music and broaden their horizon as far as what music. And of course I'm thinking mostly of the classical music than contemporary music. I mean there's a world full of classical music out there that I'm not sure that our students get exposed to. And I could say the same thing about art and many forms of art that I think students should have the opportunity to be exposed to and understand those forms of art. So I don't know if it could be wrapped up into an art appreciation and that including sculpture, painting, and music. I mean, I just, again, for people who don't paint, people who, there aren't many sculptors in high school, but students who, for some reason, never had the opportunity to play an instrument, but should have the opportunity to be exposed to the breadth of music, as well as the breadth of art.
Well, actually, the timeliness of John's comment, right now we're into the music renewal, and the art will kick in later this year, so this certainly is something that we can take to that committee. If it didn't appear back on the table in this fiscal year, it may very well a year from now, but that's something that team, so the timing of this is great.
I mean, it might mean having to redo something else. That's the trade-off that I think I'd like to see presented to us.
I have similar sentiments about those areas as well, but since we're mentioning it, and I know that we can't do this at this particular time, but something that this board has reiterated over the year, we looked at and we approved the new world language curriculum, and we tried to make effort in coordinating with the middle and the high school, but we also, a few years back, had to eliminate elementary world languages, and I would hope that at some point we can find a way to keep our eye on that area, because as we're talking about Common Core standards and improving ourselves globally, one way that you can really make a dent is to start offering world languages early on. It builds vocabulary, greater understanding of your own grammar and your language. I mean, the benefits are lengthy. So it's just an area. I know right now we're not talking about adding to the what we just approved, but you're asking us if we had priorities, where would we go? So those are some areas that we don't want to lose sight of. I think that the board had said this on multiple occasions. Jody?
That's helpful. That gives us some guidance.
I think Jody wants to give us some guidance.
Maybe more reading readiness help at the elementary school level.
Okay.
And also, this is really a wish list, but I was really very impressed with the living skills class that my oldest daughter took at the high school, because I felt it prepared her for whether she was going on to college or going into the workforce or whatever. And and I know you have bits and pieces in a lot of other courses, but I would like to see it be kind of opened up more students so they would want to take it, the way that you present it to them, because I think it's really important. We're trying to get them ready academically, but I think we need to get them ready emotionally and being able to be on their own and when they get out into the real world.
And again, that may be part of the upcoming renewal when they hit the cycle. Yep.
Great. Well, maybe we can have another mid-year. We can take a peek again.
Well, when we present the budget,
right.
Give us all a reality check, won't it?
Thank you. Thank you for catching that. That is fly by. Did you want to comment on the budget line?
On the calendar?
On the timeline calendar, I think we...
I just had a thought, and we talked about this a year ago, and we know how early this process is, and sometimes much earlier than other places. And so we've targeted as a date of December 20th to get the budget to you. It's approved by the end of January, but then we don't go to the Board of Finance till the 20th of March. And so we're looking at 2 workshops on the 10th and the 17th like we did a year ago. And again, Kathleen and I would extend an invitation to the other boards and their membership. But we're going to work real hard to get to the 20th. If by chance we don't hit that target, can we get the budget book to you on the 2nd, right after the holiday season?
Sure. Between the 20th and the 2nd, probably not.
Oh, you know what?
Jody used to
Santa
say...
will bring it on the 24th around midnight.
Yeah, that's what Jody used to say. It's a Christmas present. I think, I really think that's ample time, and particularly when we looked at last year's timeline, we had plenty of time
The
with the 2 workshops.
Really helpful.
Yeah, the workshops were excellent, and we'll continue that practice. I think that's fine.
So if we approve this, then what we would do is set up workshops for the 10th and the 17th, and then we would have a special meeting to approve the budget on the 24th. And Joyce, that would be our regular meeting, right, on the 24th?
I think it is.
Yeah. So that would be the timeline, and then we'll still be able to meet the deadline for the town. And then I think we've actually been moved up a week in the revision of the calendar. I think there was a holiday in there. So, but
and if for any reason we needed a 3rd meeting, we still have a whole week in there. But besides that, we still have time to add if we needed to.
And I think the good news is we're not anxious to get out on a bid process like we were a year ago with the health insurance.
Right.
We will get renewal numbers from Anthem, but at the same time, we're also looking at the co-op, and that may be our best way of saving money. And the town and the board is working on this jointly.
Great.
Okay?
We don't need a motion on that.
No.
That's wonderful. So we did a lot. Thank you very much, and get to go home in time to see the debate.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second by Jody. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? You have 20 minutes to get home.